Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley Warwick. Like he said, I'm a speech-language pathologist, and primarily I've practiced in the public school setting. I've also done a little bit of home health and rehab, but my love really is public school. And I know most of you probably have a public school speech-language pathologist that you're working with. Hopefully you have a really good relationship with he or she, because I know they're very, very important for communication. And then this is my husband.
Hi everyone, I'm Brian. I'm a healthcare IT architect, like he mentioned earlier. I've had a privilege of working with some of the top physicians in the Texas Medical Center. So I don't know if you know Dr. Jennifer Arnold from The Little Couple. I've worked with her, built applications with her around simulation. So Central Speech and CoreVOICE in particular is an AAC application that we've developed. And we're going to talk a little bit today about low-tech and high-tech AAC, engagement and participation of AAC across user settings, and really what CoreVOICE is all about.
So basically, AAC, you're probably all familiar with this, but it's all forms of communication that are used to express thoughts, needs, wants, and ideas. Okay, so even gestures, facial expressions, that's communication. When we're talking about in the public school setting and we talk about assistive technology, so not just focused on communication, but when we talk about AT, that could be like a pencil grip that your child needs because it helps them with writing. It could be a wheelchair to get around. They have to have that piece of assistive technology. So when we look at augmentative alternative communication, how can they communicate throughout their day and, and get their wants and needs expressed? There's a continuum, of course, of devices, and I've talked to a few of you already about what your kids are currently using. You've got your low-tech communication boards, and we talked a lot about Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS. It's definitely research-based. There are levels to it. You start out with exchanging a picture with holding an enticing item. If they really, really love bubbles, you're going to have those bubbles, and instead of saying a million times, "You want the bubbles? You want the bubbles? You want the bubbles?" You have to be silent and entice them, and they give you the picture of that. That creates good initiation. That shows them that someone doesn't have to always prompt me to ask for something. So picture exchange is really good for that, but what that creates is a lot of nouns. We have tons of I have them in our house. The first part of my career, that was mainly, what we did was picture exchange, and I have tons of folders and binders of all these pictures that I printed out from Boardmaker. And that's good, and they all have their place in your child's life. You can use a variety of things. So when we go up, there are communication boards that are basically the pictures that are arranged in a board-like fashion. And then you have your switches, so your buttons, Big Mac switches, that you typically have to print out something. It requires you to figure out, okay, what does my child need? Let's print it out, let's laminate it, let's put it in front of the button. Now let's record what we want the message to be. That's fine too. Then you go up to kind of mid-tech. You've got your GoTalks, which you have to still print out and slip pages in behind it. And then you've got your, of course, high-tech devices. That's where we fit in. We're a speech-generating device. Okay, so let's talk about why, in our name, it's CoreVOICE, core vocabulary. This is where we get away from just all of those nouns, and we really focus on 80% of what we need to communicate with. So if you take out your cell phone and you look at the last 3 or 4 text messages that you've sent to one another, 100% guarantee it's going to have core words in it. You're not going to be talking about a lot of fringe words, which would be like chandelier. Do I really have to have that word in my device? No, probably not. I could get the message across. I could say light, up, on. So words that can be used in almost every situation are what core are, and that's what we really based our app off of. Has multiple meanings as well. When you look at fringe, Fringe is still important. We still need that, but you don't need as much of it. It's very specific, only 20% of what we say. So if you have a child who's not communicating much at all, this is somewhere good to start, because then you have, 80% of what you can communicate. We also have, we'll get more into this later, but we have a section where you can add in French vocabulary, so you can have that. You can personalize the app to what your child needs, but the rest of the app still looks the same and pretty cohesive. Yep.
So Ashley's the brains. She's the speech pathologist. I'm the code monkey husband, and I'm also a computer nerd. And so I love tech. I love the history of technology. And so I'm going to talk briefly about kind of the history of tech, how we've gotten to where we've gone today, and why iPads and these devices in our pockets are just so incredible, especially for AAC. So back in the 60s was the first sip and puff device. This is a very 10,000-foot timeline of AAC, but in the 70s, you had a lot more manufacturers coming online, but those were still very specific devices. In the 80s, they developed what's called target scanning, where you can kind of look. And then in the 90s, we had newer tech, like software-based books, and everything kind of blew up in 2008 when Apple started the App Store. Android also launched their App Store in 2008. 2011 was when Amazon came online with their store, and so I'm sure everybody knows there are hundreds of thousands of apps in the marketplace today. So we launched CoreVOICE this year in 2018. And it seems like the HDMI keeps wanting to cut out on us. Okay. So I mentioned a little earlier about these devices in our pocket. Well, what I'm showing here is a thing called Moore's Law, and it shows you how over time processing power continues to get more and more powerful, but also the cost of computing is going down. And in the top right is a picture of a mainframe computer from a long time ago. And today, the device in your pocket is much more powerful than that thing that took up an entire room. Technology, I don't have to repeat that, but it continues to change and evolve. And so our world today is surrounded by a lot of different pieces of technology. We have computers and mobile devices. We now have wearables. We have like Fitbits, and we have devices that can track your child's well-being. We have, I'm sure everybody has a smart TV by now. But we're surrounded by smart devices in our homes, like Amazon Alexa. We also have it in our cars. And then this is where we come, or what we love the most, is when it comes to digital assistants and artificial intelligence. Today, Google, Amazon, they are investing heavily in natural language processing and coming up with more natural sounding voices so that you can use text to speech to come up with a more natural sounding voice. And this continues to improve. So we mentioned CoreVOICE. CoreVOICE is the app that we came up with. And this is a picture of it. But the key thing with our device, or our app, is that it runs on any device. You're not locked into iOS or Android or anything else like that. We use 80% of core vocabulary, and we have BYOD, bring your own device, because anything that's in your pocket right now, you could go download our app, just on the App Store, just like Pandora or any other app, and it'll work for you. It has Spanish and English, and we follow Usability.Gov Standards when it comes to user interfaces, and I'll get into that in a little bit, what that means. But before I do, we like to show people this chart about AAC today, because Ashley, being the speech pathologist, we created CoreVOICE after she kind of kept running into issues with a lot of the AAC apps on the market today. And so CoreVOICE was designed to try to alleviate those problems that we were seeing. So first and foremost was cost. A lot of the technology and the apps today are still very expensive. I'm sure I don't have to name names, but I know y'all are familiar with them. But we always say, app plus device is total cost. And we have device bolded there because there are some AAC applications that only work on certain hardware devices. Ours is only $49.99 on any app store. Ease of use is another problem because today, a lot of these apps are very confusing. Interfaces should be predictable and easy to understand. Think about Apple, Android, if you have that phone in your pocket. It's predictable and it's easy. The people spend, when I say people, companies, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars in figuring out how that phone icon should look, how it should be placed. And they make sure they follow standards so that it's accessible to everybody. Vocabulary and message selection is also challenging for people because programming these devices can be very confusing for parents, also confusing for speech pathologists like my wife. And so we made CoreVOICE to where you don't have to program anything. By focusing on core vocabulary, which doesn't change, we're able to streamline the words that we put in the application. And then, and we'll show you a little bit later how it actually works, but it's basically, you can't break it or change the first 1 through 9 pages of it. There is a custom section that we'll show you a little later. And then data collection and logging. A lot of these apps record everything that the child does and says. I come from the healthcare world where HIPAA is insanely important. And so our philosophy is kind of what happens on that device stays on the device. We don't log everything that the child does. We always use the example, would you want everybody to know every single word that you're saying? Would you feel comfortable communicating and saying what's on your mind? CoreVOICE, just, it's what happens in that app stays in the app. But I touched on Usability.gov standards. These are standards that Google, Apple, Amazon, everybody follows when it comes to technology. Unfortunately, some of the apps well, there's a lot of apps that I've noticed in the marketplace that aren't necessarily following these standards. So we apply it to CoreVOICE. So we keep the interface simple. We create consistent and common UI elements. We're purposeful in our page layout. We strategically use color and texture. We create hierarchy and clarity in how you navigate through the app. And you make sure that the system communicates what's happening and then think about the defaults. So basically what all that means is, and again, this is from usability.gov. What this means is your app, any app that you work with and communicate with, it should be predictable. Just like when you pick up your phone, you know where the dialer is going to be. And if you pick up somebody else's phone, you know where that dialer is going to be. It's not different on every single person's phone, or you don't have the option to move it around different places on that device, or bury it 2 or 3 folders deep on that device. So that's how we approach AAC with CoreVOICE.
Okay, so we're going to get into the app now and show you that. So Brian, if you want to pull that up. With regard to design, and like he was talking about with AAC, some of the big name apps are absolutely wonderful. So I use them. I still work full-time for a school district, and my kids are on all different devices. So I have to be, an expert at kind of all of them as well. But for the kids who really didn't have a voice yet, and this previous year I worked at the high school as well, and some kids who were still not communicating anything and sitting there, and we put core boards, printed out core boards that we got that are wonderful, but they weren't motivated by it at all. We were still doing hand over hand to try to get them to communicate, and with this, with the voice output, they were immediately engaged and loved it. And so this, with navigation, what we can do, the bottom row is where you're going to navigate to the different pages. So we have home and actions, your question words that you're going to start with. We have a describing tab that's really the most common. Opposite pairs. We have my body, so of course we've got body parts and feelings. Environment, this is really great. My teachers love to use this page for their circle time. We talk about weather and all of that and days of the week. And then, of course, we've got our nouns, and these are just the most common. So, the blank space that you see on some of those screens is intentional. It's to not overcrowd and, just to fill it up. These are absolutely the most common. If I see that in my practice there are a few words, and there were after I developed it and came up with the words, and I drew the icons. I drew the whole set because I wanted it to be optimized for mobile as well. So we also have phrases, so not just the icons, but we have common phrases. And then this is the My Stuff page, and this is kind of really exciting because you have up to 60 icons that you can put in and create as your personal core, your personal or fringe, whatever you want to call it, but it's your stuff. So if you have your favorite food, if you really want your kid to go find their shoes in the morning, put in shoes if you want to say that. But basically, this is really cool. You can use emojis, so you can see the emojis here, and we can show you back at the booth. If you want to stop by, we can show you how to access your emoji keyboard, and you actually add it. So I was talking to parents earlier who their child loves dinosaur train. So I would type out dinosaur train, and I would pick the emoji of a dinosaur, and I would use it. You would probably use that a lot. I could sing the theme song right now to all of the kids' shows. But to get to that, to get to My Stuff, you basically go to the settings wheel at the top, very easy. These are basically the only things that you can manipulate within the app. So the user's name to speak, type in your child's name, that creates a button on the My Stuff page. Then you've got Speak on Item Press. So this is important. We have a yellow highlighting feature when you touch a button. So you can see, you've got the visual feedback of what you're touching. But if you're at that stage where you want to see and hear exactly what's being touched and said, it'll do it immediately. If you're a more sophisticated communicator, a little bit later, more advanced, and you want to turn that off, you can wait and compose your thought like we compose our thoughts. It'll pop into the sentence bar at the top. And that did it again. Neither. It'll pop into the sentence bar at the top, as you can, now you can see it. And then you can press the sentence bar, speaking bar, and it'll say the whole thing. Yeah. The audio is not hooked up to that, so you won't hear it now.
Talk about the
yeah. Okay, so then if there's a mishit and you're like, I just spent a lot of time composing this sentence or helping my child and modeling it, then you can press that button and it just takes one word away. And if you're ready to clear it, you can press the other button and it clears out your message.
Do you want to talk about?
Yeah. Okay, so another thing too, let's do the grid zoom level right now. So you can go to 2 times the grid zoom. It makes it larger. So now you can swipe around and see it, so it's just visually easier to see, but you still have the same motor plan, and that's what's so important about it. The layout is very strategic. So if the words and pictures were to go away, you could still do it in your sleep and find where those words were. You need to be able to do that. So that's super important. And then when we've got English and Spanish built in, it accesses your device's language capability and you switch over. So that's built in. We also have hiding buttons, so masking. This was a big thing that we actually just added in our last update. And it's wonderful. So right now he's masking these out. If you want to just teach go and eat and see, and you're working on an activity to do that, you can mask everything else out and go ahead and exit masking. That's how it looks. Yeah. So that's how it looks, and you can do your activity with that so it's not as visually overwhelming, but then I caution you in keeping it like that. Make sure to add that back. So you want to add that back so they have access to all of their vocabulary. You don't want to restrict it, is the point. So hide it to teach it, and then they'll know where it is, you'll know where it is, and then you can move on from there. Okay, another feature that we have, we had one other app that we were going to do that was like a switch. So it was like your Big Mac switch. And instead of doing another app that you have to purchase, we integrated it in with this. So this was as part of our last update as well. So when you have your My Stuff and you have 2 or 3, let's say we have a communicator that's just maybe using switches or just using buttons and needs a very small field, you can just go on the My Stuff page, enter in their absolute, things that they need, 2 or 3 of them. And on there you go. And on the settings page, it says enlarge. So if you enlarge the My Stuff tab, you basically just created a switch right there. You don't have to print it out. You don't have to laminate it. You don't have to record it on the button. It's done for you. It's very simple. Put in whatever you want, and you've got it. It can take the whole hand. You don't have to touch with just your finger, so that makes it easy as well. That's what it looks like enlarged. And then if not, you're going to see some of the blank space if you want to take it out of enlargement. All right.
Should we him back into the
Yeah, go back into that.
Okay, so we talked about that. Masking. Oh, this is you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so as a speech pathologist, my advice for communication, and this is huge. I know that I experienced this with my caseload, and I know that y'all experience like a lot of behavior issues. Communication is key to that. You have to have a way to communicate your feelings and your needs, and behaviors most of the time go down from that. And so you really need to do kind of these things when you're looking at AAC and communicating, and hopefully your speech path can be, your person to help you do this. We do this in therapy all the time. The first one is sabotage your environment. Okay, so if I'm working on a coloring and cutting activity, I'll hide the crayons and I'll say, okay, color that red. And they're looking at me like, okay, there's no crayons here. And I'm like, yeah, color it red. I'm like waiting for you to say red or crayon or please or more anything. Communicate that. I can't just give you everything. And I know as a parent, we probably do. We anticipate our children's every need, and we just give it to them. So you have to kind of withhold some of that. If they've got a favorite toy, put it up high where they can't get it, or put it in a box so they have to say open. They need help to get it, or they have to ask you for that toy. So it's sabotaging your environment. I do that, to get communication attempts all the time in therapy. You want to focus on keywords when you're modeling. So when you pick up the device, you have to be pretty good or better at using your child's device. So let's say you have Proloquo to go. You need to be just as good at using it as they are. You're their model. So it's the same as when, a child is learning English just naturally. They hear it over and over and over for a year before we sometimes hear a first word, or 2 years or 3 years, if we've got a delay. And so these kids, they've got to see modeling on their device, whatever it is. And that just means you not being scared of it, picking it up and using it. And I will say that working with a lot of teachers and paraprofessionals, most of the time the parents are the expert, and probably more so than even sometimes their speech path. So basically this with CoreVOICE, I wanted to make it easy for teachers and paraprofessionals to pick it up and use it and not be scared of it and scared that they're gonna break something that the speech path programmed it to do. They've got to be able to use it and not put it up on the shelf and know, like, okay, this is their voice. I need to use it within everything that they're doing. It's that important to use it all the time. And providing wait time sometimes is hard. I like to talk. And so I know some of it, if you really want to get something out of your child and you're like, okay, do this, what is this, what is this, what is this? You've got to have some quiet time so they can process what you've just asked. That's important. And that's the same way with this. When you model something, so meaning you pick it up and you touch go. And then you say, oh, like you've got a car, and you want for them to say go, for the car to go. Model that, make the car go, stop it, withhold it, and then you give it to them and show, and hopefully, they will start with you taking turns like that. They'll start to push go, and then you make that car go as fast as you can, to honor that request that they've said and they've communicated that to you. Asking open-ended questions is also very important. If you want a yes-no answer, you're going to ask a yes-no question, And so asking open-ended, even with our kids who are pretty limited verbal or nonverbal, it's important to say that and to frame your question the right way. And I've got a way for y'all to do that too on my blog, and I'll show you that in a little bit as well. Make sure that AAC is available all day, every day. I know this is very important. So in any activity that they're doing, like if they're watching a video, their favorite video on their iPad or on the phone, an easy way to get them to communicate that they want to still keep watching that is to press stop. I know the tantrum will come, but trust me, press stop, my turn. And then if they want it to go again, have them press go or my turn on their device. And then you've got that interaction back and forth, you've got that communication, and pretty soon they say, oh, if I want that video, I can say that. Or, if it's on the My Stuff page and they want to watch Dinosaur Train, that's fine. Have them say it, and then, uh-oh, what happened? And pause it. Oh, my goodness, it stopped. Then let's press it again. Oh, you want that? Okay. You don't have to do it the entirety of the show. Get a few trials in. That's what your speech language pathologist is doing in those sessions. We're setting up those opportunities to communicate, and so to be able to do that at home is key to carry over those skills. Okay, so core vocabulary in the classrooms. CoreVOICE is available on Windows, and that's how we're able to bring it up there to show you. And what's cool about that is that teachers can project this to their smart boards. So it doesn't matter if the kids in the room, one is using LAMP, one's using Proloquo, and one's using CoreVOICE. You put this up on the screen on the smart board, the kids can physically walk up and interact with the board during their lesson. And it's good for all kids. So even if you've got some kids who are verbal, it's good to model core language. So that's pretty exciting for the classroom. Okay, so I kind of touched on this, but visual language, that's what these icons are, is a visual language. So if you were to go to another country and somebody wanted you to immediately start speaking French, you can't do it. You have to be immersed in it. You have to understand it first, and then you're going to start speaking it. So I know a lot of your kids and a lot of kids on my caseload, like, their receptive language is great. They understand, but where is that expressive language? Where is it? We've got to find it. You give somebody a way to communicate, and you immerse them in this. So you're doing it on the smart board. You're doing it during activities. You're doing it during mealtime. You're doing it when you're watching the video on, and playing the game on the tablet. Then they get it. They start to see it because you're modeling it. You're modeling that language. So this just happens to be that it's more visual. And then 9 times out of 10, expressive language will come from that. It's not a guarantee. Of course, we can't guarantee anything. But it is good once they have a hold of that and they can see that there's power in communicating, then we start to see more expressive language growth. All right. Literacy is a huge love of mine, so I love AAC, and that's one of my passions, but literacy is huge, and so it's a nice pairing with AAC, and I think it's just a natural way to learn. So if you pair that, it helps to generalize skills. So on centralspeech.com, on corevoiceapp.com as well, I have a link to our blog, and in my therapy sessions, I focus on one book per month. sometimes two if they're kind of similar. And I take that book and I dissect it. I mean, we talk about, we learn all the vocabulary in it. But what's great is that, kids need to read books over and over, typically developing kids. They're going to come up to you, can you read again? Can you read again? You're like, seriously, kid, do we really want to read that book again? The answer is yes, they need it. And research shows behind that about the first week that you're reading a book, they're absorbing it. The second week, they're gaining some receptive skills. The third week, they're going to start to play around with it and really understand what those words mean and expressively. And then the fourth week, it's cemented. So what I do is I take my language concepts with that book and we act it out. We do activities. I have a game for all my books. But what's cool for you that you have access to on the blog is that the books that I'm doing in therapy, I have on the blog, and I have all core questions. So you can pick up the book, and you can look at those questions, and it has exactly what to model on CoreVOICE. Take it with the other system that you're using as well. Model that, and then they're seeing that, and they're getting those literacy skills, which is so, so important. You don't have to model the whole question. You can just model a key word. So if you see that I've had the whole question and the whole answer, don't think that you have to go through and model each and every word for the question, but it's there for you if you want to. But it's absolutely fine for you to say just one key word out of it and then say the whole question. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. You can model that and still ask the question like you would if you were reading the book.
I apologize for the HDMI failing. I think the projector's getting a little tired. This other part about kind of other places and reasons or how you can use CoreVOICE is kind of geared more towards our nursing home and hospital patients, but really just highlights that AAC should be easy. It should be something that anybody can pick up and use right away. You should not have to be trained on it and how to understand how to interact with something. Ashley referred to some of the AAC activities on her blog. Here are a couple examples of some books that she's done. We have a website listed here at the end of the presentation. But CoreVOICE, really, if you're interested in it, we're going to be at the back. You can come play around with it some. You can construct sentences, have it speak the words. But CoreVOICEapp.com has links to all the marketplaces where it's pretty simple. You just go buy the app. Surprisingly, that's the #1 question we get asked from people, I guess because people aren't used to buying apps. They're used to just downloading the free ones. But when you just purchase it, it's as simple as opening up and getting started. If you want to have custom buttons, you just go to the My Stuff. You add your button, you hit enter, you add your button, hit enter. It's that quick. But our company is kind of focused more also beyond AAC. We really want to work on communication, and we're going to continue to try to innovate in the AAC space. So for example, I'm currently working on like facial tracking and recognition. Earlier when I mentioned artificial intelligence, things that Google and Amazon are working on, especially Amazon, they're developing a whole healthcare wing. There are all these services that companies like ours can start hooking into and utilizing. You hear the cloud all the time. And these are things that are going to help all of your kids and us, adults, as we get older and we grow and we start having more data collected on us, especially in healthcare. We are working on like predictive models. It's so cool and exciting right now where technology and healthcare are merging. But then I have a picture here of Amazon Alexa because we also do Alexa stuff. And kind of like a little surprise to us was when we were asked to come here, I asked Alexa about 1P36, and Alexa didn't know what it was. So what I did was I went ahead and created an Alexa skill. It actually made it public today. So it's kind of like our little gift to 1P36, where you can go home. I'll have fun with it right now. So I have Alexa right here, and hopefully you can hear it, but I'm going to say, Alexa, 1p36 deletion syndrome.
What would you like to know about 1p36 deletion syndrome?
What is it?
1p36 deletion syndrome is a chromosome disorder that can be characterized by moderate to severe intellectual disability, delayed growth, limited speech ability, and distinct facial features. It is estimated that 1p36 deletion syndrome occurs in 1 in every 5,000 to 10,000 births, though many individuals still go undiagnosed. Though many people have never heard of 1p36 deletion syndrome, it is one of the most common chromosome deletions. Can I help you with anything else regarding 1p36 deletion syndrome?
What are some organizations that help with 1p36?
1p36dsa.org is an excellent organization with additional resources for 1p36 deletion syndrome. They also host annual conferences for families and caregivers of children with 1p36 deletion syndrome. Can I help you with anything else regarding 1p36?
I'll turn it off there. So now anyone with an Alexa in the world can ask what 1p36 is. And so Ken, at some point we'll have to get together and you have to tell me what else. I just kind of copied and pasted some stuff that was on the website. So, we really appreciate you guys having us. We're local here to Houston. I also work in the Texas Medical Center. But this November, we're going to be in Boston at the big national conference for all speech language pathologists. Our company is centralspeech.com. And again, if you want to know more about the app, CoreVOICEapp.com is where you can go. And again, we'll be at the back for the remainder of the afternoon. But if you guys have any questions, we would love to answer them. So, here you go.
I've got it all.
Okay. Everybody out of here? Oh, we have a question.
I'm just gonna yell. I can yell, okay.
Not too loud.
When you do get the app, do you have to buy it and download it to every device, or is it a sign-in? Once you buy it, you can sign and log in on any device?
It's actually per store. So we don't control that. So if you want it on your Amazon Fire tablet, you buy it there. And then if you want it on your iPad, you do have to buy it again. But it's per store.
Yeah, so it's per your family account. So like if you have like an iPhone and a tablet, an iPad, as long as you're logged in, like if you go buy it under your account and you sign into your iPad account with that account and your iPhone with that account, which pretty much everybody does, it's going to work across those devices because that's how all of the markets, whether it's Android, Amazon, iPad, Apple, they all do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, correct. Yeah,
It's just per store. You have to.
We've actually had there was a company here in town that they had one Android account associated to 10 tablets for their company, and so they just bought it once because it's under their account, and then they're using it on all those devices.
Perfect. Yeah. Any other questions?
Are you guys eye gaze compatible?
Not yet.
But that's what
We're,
you're going to develop that, but that's what we were talking about a little bit with the facial tracking. That's going to be huge. So, eventually, yes, we'll be able to look at the app and dwell on a spot, and it'll talk. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding eye gaze, so I'm kind of been working on that, so I make no promises that it's going to be in the app anytime soon, but I mentioned artificial intelligence and cloud computing because a lot of these services that used to seem like sci-fi are now readily available for anyone to start hooking into and using for their apps. So a lot of the eye gaze technology that's on the market today was developed, a decade or 2 decades ago, and they rely a lot on you put there'll be like a dot in your head, and has specific hardware designed for that. But now what you can do is what we're going to be trying to do is with the front camera, you can actually track through facial recognition where you're looking at on that device. So that's what we want to integrate into our app eventually. But Apple and Google and Amazon are investing heavily in accessibility features. And so it wouldn't surprise me if in the next couple years you see eye gaze technology just make its way to the device, just period. Because
It could be.
yeah, if you go into the accessibility settings of any of your devices, you'll see that they continue to add more features. And then when it comes to things like text-to-speech, that stuff just continues to get better. Google, with their digital assistant that they've been working on, you're actually getting to the point where you can ask it to do something, and AI is going to call. I don't know if anyone's seen that video online, but you know, a digital assistant, when I say that, I'm talking a computer program. They have it to where you can actually, it'll call on your behalf and have a natural conversation with someone behind the scenes and schedule it to your calendar. And so
I know, it's crazy.
it's so cool, because, and then Amazon, they've formed an entire healthcare wing around assistive technology and healthcare. Right now they're doing cancer research. But Amazon knows that, like with Alexa, especially for like the hospital I've worked at, it's very important to have the ability to speak and dictate that into the medical record. So it would not, like I said, that's a long, long answer to say that the world and technology is changing, and accessibility is going to become more and more built in to the devices that are in our pocket.
So your program, you're going to try to keep up with that as it's coming out?
Yes, so the beautiful thing about that with cloud computing is that it's bringing down the cost of those things. Now, of course, those are all subscription based, and we want to keep the app as affordable as possible. So we're going to have to look and see and experiment with it. The other thing with those types of technologies is because they're in the cloud, it requires an internet connection. And right now what's great about our app is there's no internet connection required. You don't have to sign in to anything. It's just on your device. Yeah.
About my stuff. This is a little bit of a side note, but I know a parent asked me earlier, or several, on my stuff, if we're going to add the ability to take a picture of like your favorite thing, so you can add that on my stuff, which I know is important. And I've had several of my SpeechPath friends who are using the app with their caseload, and over the summer, actually, in fact. And a mom really wanted that, and I think that's great. I like that our the first 9 boards are consistent, and that's what's so important, and I think that's what's lacking in some of the other systems, is that consistency. But that's something to look forward to too, or as well, and that will come as an update. So if you purchase it, you'll get all the updates that we roll out.